realized when you're standing in front of your parents, her mom said with displeasure. She pursed her lips. Listen, Wang, 𝐻𝐸 is Prince His Majesty's only son. He promised he would give the Duke's title to our family. We have lost everything. We need their support, he said in a low tone, staring at her as if trying to know something. Wang sat on the floor, placing her hands on his knees. Father, that 𝐻𝐸 just wants revenge on me, because I have seen him killing the Count. What? When? Where did you see it? You must have done something because of your impulsive nature, her mother asked with wide eyes. Wang glanced at her father, who was waiting for her to speak. She began speaking. When I was returning from the north, Wang's carriage moved slowly through the dense silent forest. Suddenly the tranquility was shattered by a series of agonized cries and groans. Her heart pounded as she signaled her driver to halt. Her curious and impulsive nature propelled her out of the carriage and into the woods. Following the sounds, she navigated through the thick underbrush until she came upon a small clearing. Her breath caught in her throat at the sight before her. 𝐻𝐸, the king's, who is also the chief of the army, stood over a bleeding Count, his eyes gleaming with a sinister light as he drove the sword into the man's chest. Stop it! Her voice caught his attention. She rushed forward. 𝐻𝐸 watched her with amusement. Princess Wang, Your Highness, she is the former princess of North. Before Wang could reach the Count, 𝐻𝐸's hand shot out, gripping her arm and pulling her closer, his other hand still holding the bloodied sword. Leave, you monster! The knight and his guards' eyes widened as they prayed for her life. Why do you interfere, my lady? He asked in a low tone, dangerous whisper. His breath was hot against her ear, making her shiver. You are a monster. This is barbaric. How could you? She spat, struggling against his iron grip. I had heard it before, but now I have seen what kind of a monster you are. 𝐻𝐸's expressions darkened on her words. His pride wounded. He tightened his hold on her, pressing her even closer, so she could feel the hard lines of his body against hers. Such disrespectful, yet your beauty captivates me. It's a shame you don't know your place. His lips brushed against her earlobe. Wang's eyes widened in fear and anger as he turned his attention back to the Count, plunging the sword into his heart and ending his life in one swift, brutal motion. You'll regret this, she cried, holding his collar. I'll make sure everyone knows what you truly are. She yelled at his face. 𝐻𝐸's face reddened with such insult. With a sudden burst of strength, she wrenched herself free from his grasp. I cut the hands that tried to come to my collar. You are in deep trouble, my lady. His tone dripped with hatred. Wang fled back through the forest beaches and brambles, tearing her dress and skin. 𝐻𝐸 watched her go, a smile playing on his lips. Find out everything about her, he said to his knight, lost in deep thought. This is going to be interesting. He chuckled evilly. Wang completed her parents stared at her in disbelief while her heart trembled, feeling his burning touch. You have got yourself in trouble, Wang. This impulsive nature of yours will drown you, she spoke through gritted teeth, holding back an urge to hit her on the head and knock some sense into her brain. He is not known as a tyrant for nothing, Wang. You shouldn't have interfered with his business. He is an egoistic, stubborn, cold-blooded and ruthless person. You have hurted his ego and he'll make you pay, he said in a serious tone, while Wang felt like crying. Why are you both scaring me? I'm not scaring you, informing you what kind of a person he is. I know how he is. He is even seen in brothel, and Aurelia, the most beautiful lady of the brothel, is his mistress. But the point is, you were ready to hand me over to him. She stood with an displeasant expression. You are just an idiot. Who would say this crazy girl belongs to a noble family? I'll never let my stupid daughter marry that tyrant. Her mom placed a light slap on her head and walked out. I just wanted to know your decision because 𝐻𝐸 said you like him as well, but can't tell us. Don't worry, if you don't want to marry him, I won't force you. He spoke softly. She smiled and hugged him. Thank you, father. I'll go to the north in a few days. He couldn't find me there. I have sent a letter to Theodore. 3 days later, Wang was ready to flee back to the north while her father thought he would send a letter to 𝐻𝐸 and excuse once Wang was gone. Though it was not even dawn and Wang was ready to go when a maid came running breathless. His Highness is here. His guards have taken over the palace. She spoke with a lower head. Everyone's eyes widened when the door opened, revealing 𝐁𝐥𝐸 with his guards. Everyone bowed respectfully, but Wine was glaring at him. With an evil smirk, he stood right in front of her. Bow and greet him. She nudged her arm, who was glaring at 𝐁𝐥𝐸. My lady, this old city stirs a fire within me, urging me to envelop you into the warmth of my embrace. He leaned towards her ear and crushed you down. He said through gritted teeth. Wine's breath hissed as his hot breath fanned her neck and ear. 𝐁𝐥𝐸 moved back with the same sinister smile. I see, my lady. Ready to flee? He asked with raised brows and fixed his gaze on her parents. Mistress, so you have let me down, he said, shaking his head with an innocent face. You must pay for this. Get him down. He coolly ordered his guards, who rushed towards Wine's father and took out his sword. Stay away from my father, she yelled, standing in front of her parents. So furious, brave, he stopped and touched her face with his sword. And beautiful. Shut up, she jerked away his sword. Her mom stood in a corner shedding tears. What do you want? She asked through gritted teeth. Finally you came to the point. He kept back the sword. I want you. If you want to see your father safe and sound, come with me, otherwise I'll send your father to 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐸, he said darkly. Her mother gasped and pursed her lips and closed her eyes. You know you can't stop me because I do what I say. She heard his voice too close and opened her eyes. Wine glanced at her father and moved close to him. It's okay, Wine. I have spent my life. It wouldn't matter if I spent the last days of my life in 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐸, he said in a low tone. She held his hands as her vision blurred. Even if you don't go with me willingly, I have other ways. Besides, today's our wedding and by now everyone would have received the invitation, he said nonchalantly. Can't you be less monster, she growled. 𝐁𝐥𝐸 shaking his head. Wine, he squeezed her hands. She inhaled a deep breath. I'll go with you, she said in a low tone, holding back her tears. Let's go, my lady, I'm waiting, he said and walked out. Wine turned to her parents. And yeah, as promised, father-in-law, you'll be given the title of Duke, don't worry, he said without turning to them. Don't make impulsive decisions, Wine, he said. Dangerous man, don't you know? She cried. Wine held her hands. Mother, I'm not scared of him. He can't do anything. We have already lost everything. I don't want you to live a tough life anymore. You're out of your mind, she cried and walked away. Wine, if you have decided to go on this path, then try to change him with your love. You have no other way left, he spoke softly. He ain't got a heart, father, but a stone which will either break him or shatter me, she said and hugged him. Mr. So pursed his lips, patting her back. Time skip. Wine was brought to the 𝐁𝐥𝐸's grandpa's residence instead of their royal palace. She was greeted respectfully and met his grandpa and cousin, while his father was busy with some royal duties. Throughout the empire, 𝐁𝐥𝐸 and Wine's wedding news had spread. Everyone was eager to see his bride, who would be the next queen. 𝐁𝐥𝐸 left her and went away. When Wine heard that he had gone to his mistress 𝐿𝐴𝐸, she felt disgusted, thinking in a few hours she would be his wife and he had no leisure from his mistress. Her father came to attend her wedding while her mother didn't come. Wine fell into a daze as the time for the wedding ceremony arrived, and soon she was tied in a strong bond with 𝐁𝐥𝐸. 𝐁𝐥𝐸 smiled at her with victory as he leaned and kissed her. Wine felt disgusted, thinking he would have kissed 𝐿𝐴𝐸 with the same passion. She held back her tears and stood blankly. She didn't know when and how everything came to an end. I like your choice, but please give your everything to this relationship. And looked at his father with raised brows. Please, father, it doesn't suit you talking about relationships, he said through gritted teeth. Mr. King pursed his lips. I just don't want you to ruin your life. Keep your ego aside for a while. 𝐁𝐥𝐸 smiled mockingly and gulped down the wine. Leave it for once. He took the glass from him. 𝐁𝐥𝐸 clenched his jaw. Don't interfere in my business. Keep your lectures with you. I don't need them. You and your wife didn't give me what I needed. This so-called care of yours only makes me go crazy. His red eyes were testimony to how hard he was trying to control his anger. Young man, what are you doing here? Your bride must be waiting for you. Go. He patted 𝐁𝐥𝐸's shoulder. 𝐁𝐥𝐸 smiled and bowed in respect. How many times do I need to tell you not to do this? I'm not a king anymore. I want to feel like an ordinary man without any responsibility. 𝐿 chuckled. Your wish granted, your majesty, he said playfully. Grandpa chuckled and sent him away. Mr. Kim stared at his retreating figure, thinking how different he was with Grandpa. It seemed his true self. I don't know what he would do next, father. He spoke helplessly. This is all the action of your doings. Mr. Kim closed his eyes and let out a deep breath. Meanwhile, Wine was standing in the middle of 𝐿's bedroom. She wanted to escape, but there was no way out of this palace. She was lost in her thoughts when 𝐿 entered. How do you feel, my lady? He asked with the same sinister smirk and stood in front of her. Wine stared at him blankly. I must say you look so beautiful today. He trailed his index finger from her cheek to neck. Don't touch me. She moved back. 𝐿 held her by the waist and pulled her close. Escape me if you can. She wiggled in his embrace, staring at him with disdain and disgust. He leaned and kissed her neck, taking her off guard. Leave me, you bastard. As she said, she hissed in pain as 𝐿 sank his teeth into her neck and pulled away. You know what? He grabbed her jaw. I hate you so much. Don't get this wrong, because tomorrow morning Amelia will ask for evidence of our night together. I would never touch you. And do you think I will beg you? I don't give a damn about you. She spoke sharply. 𝐿 chuckled. Don't worry, my lady. I'll cage you here and show what disrespecting me means. I'll break you beyond repair. He pushed her away and laid on the bed. Don't even think of sleeping on this bed. Make your bed down there on the floor and know your place. She pursed her lips at this humiliation. She made bed for herself on the floor, not having energy to fight with him as she was exhausted by the ceremony. Time skip. On the next day of their marriage, 𝐿 went without informing anyone and surrounded the guards all around the palace and strictly instructed them not to leave Wine out. Other than maids and guards, only Amelia, Grandpa, and Wine were in the palace. Grandpa was fuming in anger, so was Wine. All these days she got close to Amelia and Grandpa. Now she was sitting with Amelia lost in thoughts. What happened, Wine? Missing 𝐿? She asked teasingly. Wine forced a smile and shook her head. I wanted to ask you, are you married? Amelia smiled sadly. My husband passed away last year. Grandpa didn't want me to live alone in my father's palace, so he brought me here. I'm sorry, I didn't know. She held her hand. It's okay, no worries. She spoke softly. So you are 𝐿's cousin. Amelia shook her head in denial. I am his dad's cousin. Grandpa and my father were brothers. She hummed in response. Anyway, Wine, it's feast today. Go and get ready. 𝐿 and others might be here soon. Wine nodded and went back to her room. She had so many questions in her mind about 𝐿. She also wanted to know about his mother, as today she would come, while on their wedding day she wasn't present. The Wine was ready when the door opened, revealing 𝐿. Their eyes met, and for a while 𝐿 was captivated by her beauty. He looked away and composed himself. How does it feel to be caged? He asked with an evil smirk. Wine smiled. I don't feel caged. This is how life has to be. She shrugged her shoulders, and 𝐿 couldn't help but think how she could be so peaceful. I'm Prince 𝐿's wife after all. He moved close to her and tucked the hair strand behind her ear. But I don't accept you as my wife. I won't give you that place. My wife will be the one who gives birth to my child. I married you just to break your pride and show your place. He spoke huskily. Wine pursed her lips and looked away, but it didn't affect the peace on her face. She rolled her eyes, as if I am dying for you, but still it wouldn't stop me from showing your real face to everyone. She turned around. 𝐿 chuckled. Then you'll get yourself in trouble if you speak against me. Don't assume things without knowing the truth. He made his way to the door. Grandpa is waiting for you. She followed him. Slowly all of their relatives and close friends arrived. Some of them weren't present at their wedding. Grandpa introduced her to his relatives and old friends. Wine also met the queen, her mother-in-law, while she got a glimpse of 𝐿 staring at his mom with disdain and some other emotion in his eyes, but she couldn't name it. Time passed in eating, drinking, dancing, and chatting. Soon they called it a day, and Wine came back to her room. She changed and was combing her hair, thinking about 𝐿 and his mother's conversation. She heard 𝐿 speaking harshly but couldn't understand why they were arguing. The door burst open and closed, making her flinch. She gasped and turned around, where 𝐿 was staring at her with bloodshot eyes. What is this behavior? can't open it like a human. You don't have to prove yourself a monster. She kept away the comb and spoke through gritted teeth without knowing his condition. My lady, he stumbled to her. One frowned and held him. I want you, he cupped her face. You're drunk, she mumbled and helped him to lie on the bed. I'm not, he shook his head and pulled her towards him. You're so beautiful, he mumbled, staring at her face. Wine felt her heart peeking out of her ribcage. She stared at him closely. Why didn't I notice how handsome he is, she thought. Then switched the position, hovering over her while Wine was lying beneath him. Why do you always look so beautiful? It makes it hard for me to look away. He murmured, his voice slurred and thick. Wine bit her lips as he buried his face in her hair. She blinked several times. Then you're drunk, you should rest. He looked at her and shook his head. His eyes were glassy but filled with an intensity that she had never seen before. No, I need to tell you this. I pretend to hate you when I'm sober. He moved his face closer to hers. Wine's breath went uneven. But these days I can't pretend. I can't hide it. He whispered, his breath warm against her face. Her heart pounded against her chest. He cupped her face. His thumbs gently stroked her cheeks. What are you saying? She mumbled with surprise and confusion. I'm saying that I care about you more than I should. More than I want to admit. You drive me crazy, Wine. I try to push you away because I'm scared. Scared of how much I need you and love you. You will also leave me like everyone did. Before Wine could respond, his lips were on hers, a kiss desperate and full of longing. She hesitated for a moment, but the sincerity in his words and the intensity of his kiss melted her resistance. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him closer. Their kiss grew more passionate. His hands roamed all over her body, exploring, memorizing every curve and contour. He whispered her name like a prayer, his voice raw with emotion. Then she gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? His eyes, dark and full of desire, met hers. I haven't been more sure of anything. I need you, Wine. Their clothes were discarded in a blur of moment. He moved with a tenderness that surprised her. His touch both gentle and possessive. Each kiss spoke of a depth of feeling that belied his usual coldness. He whispered her name over and over, his words a mixture of adoration and need. The night passed and they were tangled in each other's embrace. Their breathing slowly returned to normal. I don't hate you, he murmured like a prayer and held her close, burying his face in her hair. He went into a deep slumber and pressed a gentle kiss to his chest, her heart full and feeling a sense of peace. For a while her heart raced, thinking what if he regretted it later. She snuggled close to him. Time skipped. The next day Wine woke up, ____ had gone. Wine felt as if he was avoiding her and it hurt her. Grandpa was angry at ____ as he sends a letter to Grandpa but doesn't ask about Wine. Wine spends the days gloomily in the garden or her bedroom staring out of the window. Amelia tries her best to keep her company but Wine has lost interest in everything. From Amelia she got to know that the Count was a traitor and tried to kill ____ and the king. She feels empty from inside. She heard the rumors of ____ being with Aurelia these days. The only thing that made her happy and forget everything was Theodore. He came to meet her and stayed with her for a few days. A few days ago, Grandpa immediately called ___ to the palace and called both his father and mother. Now the king and the queen were already there while ___ arrived after some time. They all had lunch together when ___ spoke. Why did you call me here? And how come these two are here after 20 freaking years? It's not any kind of festival or banquet today. He spoke coldly, pointing at his parents. Since he had come, everyone was silent. He pretended as if Wine didn't even exist. Where have you been these days? Grandpa glared at him coldly. I am busy with military affairs. As you are so busy with your work, take Wine with you to the official palace. He shook his head. Wine's heart clenched. She is fine here. Wine, please go and make us tea, he said softly. Wine nodded and walked out. This is not how it works, ____ she's your wife. He smiled mockingly. Why don't you keep your wife with you? We both have been living separately for 20 years while it's just been 20 days for us. Mr. and Mrs. Kim avoided each other's gaze. Mrs. Kim excused herself and walked out. That's a different matter. Yeah, it is different. You liked her and married her, but over the time you thought she didn't give you the same attention. You both began fighting. You used to get drunk every night, and one night you betrayed your wife and hooked up with someone else, and she left you. Grandpa stood shaking his head in disbelief. If someone saw how you both are talking to each other, we'd lose our face to the world. The current king and soon-to-be king disrespect each other. He walked out furiously, while Mr. Kim glared at him. Listen, Tim, don't make wine wait. Why are you letting her go through this agony? He spoke calmly. Tim pursed his lips. Wine's face flashed before his eyes. It doesn't suit you to talk like this, he said and walked out. Mr. Kim let out a sigh. Wine gave the tea to Grandpa in his bedroom and sat with him for a while. After some time, she walked to her bedroom but stopped hearing Mrs. Kim's voice. Tim, why don't you understand? You're just ruining your life. Wine is innocent. For what are you punishing her? Wine closed her eyes, biting her lips, and let out a sigh. Don't interfere in my personal matters, he growled. She's my wife. Whatever I do shouldn't concern you. Where were you when I needed you the most? Why didn't you take me with you? When I would send you letters, you would reply saying you are your father's blood, you would be no different than him. Your ego and your pride mattered the most. What was I? Both of you forget me in the war of your egos. My existence was nothing. I have become this monster because of you both. I have got both of your egos. Mrs. Kim stared at him with teary eyes. Get out of here, go. He growled. Wine swiftly went away, while Mrs. Kim also came out, realizing how her actions and words have affected him. At night, the whole day was spent in heavy tension in the air. The Wine came to the bedroom and sat on the bed while Tim was discussing something with his knight. She had her gaze fixed on him, thinking deeply. The knight went out of the room while Wine lay on the bed. Tim turned to her. This was the first time he had spared her a glance in the whole day. Why are you lying on the bed? He came close to her. Wine turned her back on him. It's my room and my bed. I'll sleep on my bed. You can sleep on the floor. He stared at her back and placed his knee on the bed. How dare you turn your back on me? He turned her to face him. I thought you might not want to see my face. Tim was captivated by her eyes. Does my face make you go crazy? She blinked her eyes innocently and encircled her arms around his neck. Flustered, Tim pulled away. Her proximity was making him crazy. Her scent and touch were familiar to his body. Stop talking nonsense and get up from here. I want to sleep. The bed is huge. You can sleep here. I'm not moving an inch. He let out a sigh and laid on the bed. Why are you pretending to be something you are not? Why do you pretend to hate me when you don't actually hate me? He turned to her with raised brows. I'm not pretending anything. I hate you. You said yourself that night. You don't hate me. In fact, you go crazy when you see me. You need me, she said with a smirk. Tim clenched his jaw. I was drunk. I could have said anything, but that doesn't mean anything to me. He saw a shadow cross her face, but she composed herself. You know what you had said. Your words, touch, cares, and tone, everything was different. You don't want to accept that's a different thing. Why didn't you face me the next day? Because you don't dare to face the reality. You know what place you have given me in your heart. She spoke calmly. Tim was speechless. How come he lost his senses and spoke his heart out? He couldn't accept it and lose in front of her. It will hurt his ego. He turned and hovered over her, pinning her hands above her head. Why are you so sure I was drunk? Could it be I was pretending to break your pride? You might not be the first woman I have told this. Haven't you heard about Aurelia? Wine hadn't thought about this aspect. She stared at him with pained expressions. The sincerity that she saw in his eyes that day couldn't be a lie. You might not know, I have talked to Father and Grandpa today. I am marrying Aurelia. She'll be my official wife and you will be just a concubine. He instantly regretted saying it, seeing the glimmer in her eyes turning to hollowness. He pursed his lips, she masked her expressions and composed herself. As I will just sit and watch you humiliating me, she released her hands from his grip and pushed him. You're just scared to accept the fact that you have fallen for me. She rolled her eyes and shook her head. Then laid beside her smiling, hearing her blood blaring. He didn't even realize when he went into a deep slumber. Few days later, 𝐿's decision caused a strange silence in the palace. Grandpa couldn't even meet Wayne's case while Emilia tried her best to console Wayne. They didn't expect 𝐿 to be so serious about Aurelia that he didn't hesitate to tell Wayne. Since then, 𝐿 had gone again while Wayne couldn't stop herself from meeting Aurelia. Though she was thinking about her conversation with Aurelia, "It's a pleasure, Your Highness, you came to see me." She bowed at her. Wayne chuckled sadly. "How did you come here? What have you done to capture 𝐿's heart?" she asked in a serious tone. Aurelia chuckled. "You must be kidding me. How come I have captured his heart? Why is he marrying you then? Why does he come to you every night? Why has he limited his proximity to you? Why doesn't he see me? Where am I in his life?" She asked in a low tone. "I do love him, but who said he's marrying me? And the most important thing, your husband is anything but characterless. He has just helped me when the king of the south brought me. He spread rumors of me being his mistress just to save me from the king of the south. He has never looked at me. Touching me is a far cry. He only has you in his heart. He only sees me as a friend. He came here twice, once after seeing you for the first time and the second after your marriage. He couldn't stop talking about how beautiful you are and how your eyes captivate him. But he can't face his feelings. His past and fear hold him back." Wayne stared at her with a mix of disbelief and confusion. "But a few days ago he said he will marry you." Aurelia chuckled, shaking her head. "But when he came the second time after your marriage, he said to me he will not be seeing me anymore. I shouldn't send him any more letters." She moved closer to Wayne and cupped her face. "You are really made for him. The love and the longing in your eyes is not different from his. I want you both to be happy," she said with a smile through teary eyes. "Don't you hate me? I love and cherish everything that belongs or connects to His Highness. His eyes speak about the craziness he has for you." Wayne smiled. "Thank you." She held Aurelia's hands. "Can we be friends?" She nodded. "That's a pleasure for me." Wayne was ashamed of the hate she had felt in her heart for Aurelia. All this while, what Wayne hadn't realized was her feeling for 𝐿. She had fallen for him, but she didn't even realize it. Later that night, 𝐿 furiously returned and lashed out at Wayne. "Why did you go to meet Aurelia?" He grabbed her by the arm. "Why are you scared? Your secret might be exposed." He pulled her closer. "Just shut up. What do you think of yourself?" She smiled, placing her hand on his chest. "Your wife." He released her with a jerk. He was confused about what to do. He let out a sigh and ran his fingers through his hair. "You want to look down on me? You want to tell me that you won and I lost?" "No, never. I'll never lose. I'll go now and propose Aurelia. I'll marry her in 3 days and bring her here." She clenched her jaw. "Do you think I'll beg you? Go ahead. I don't give a shit about you." He walked out. The maid knocked on the door and entered, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Your Highness, His Highness was attacked by enemies on his way back. His condition is critical. They escorted him here. His Majesty is calling you to the guest chamber." Wayne's heart sank. She clenched her chest. "What?" "Yes, Your Highness. He was stabbed with a poisonous dagger." Wayne ran to the guest chamber. Emilia was crying and holding Grandpa's hand. 𝐿 was lying on the bed with a pale face while the doctor was treating his wounds, which were too deep. "Grandpa," she whispered through teary eyes. Grandpa looked at her sorrowful eyes. Mr. and Mrs. Kim immediately arrived, while Wayne's father also arrived. After what seemed like forever, 𝐿 gained consciousness. Everyone was surrounded by him, while Wayne was standing in a corner with her father. "What's wrong, Wayne?" He hugged her. She cried hysterically. "Father, didn't I say he has a stone, not a heart? He shattered me, Father. I couldn't change him." He patted her head. "Everything will be fine. Your father will always be with you." Mrs. Kim sat beside him, continuously apologizing and saying how scared she was. Wayne went to make him soup. 𝐿 was looking around for her, but she was nowhere. "Are you looking for Wayne?" He nodded. "She's making soup for you." He hummed in response. After some time, Wayne gave with the soup. Only Mrs. Kim was sitting beside him, caressing his hair. "Your Majesty here." She handed her the soup while 𝐿 swiftly opened his eyes. "Why don't you give it to him? Father has called me," she said softly. Wayne hesitantly nodded. Mrs. Kim walked out while Wayne was feeding him. She didn't spare him a glance. "Why are you so quiet?" He moved away the soup. Wayne kept the bowl away and stared at her palms. There's nothing to say, she mumbled, and held her hand gently. But I have something to say. She released her hand from his grip. You don't need to say anything, Your Highness. I know my place well. I have decided what to do. She looked at him, but the coldness in her eyes clenched his heart. He should rest. She bowed like a stranger and walked out while Theon was too shocked to speak. He knew she would be angry, but he didn't expect this reaction from her. Time skip. Theon had visitors every day while his mom was getting better. He wanted to talk to Wine, but she didn't show up in front of him. When finally his wounds were healed and all the guests went back, he had got a chance to talk to her. But her mother got sick and Wine went there. He impatiently waited for her return. He couldn't go there as he had to manage some military affairs. When he went to her palace after 15 days, he got to know she had gone to the north and demanded for a divorce. Theon couldn't hold back his anger. Today it's been 12 months and Wine returned. She was sitting in her room writing a letter when the door burst open. She swiftly stood and turned around. Her heart skipped a beat seeing Theon after 2 months. He stepped closer to her and embraced her in a tight hug. Both of them remained silent, hearing each other's thumping heartbeats. Why didn't you inform me you were going? He pulled out and asked. His voice filled with longing. Wine stared at him coldly. Why are you here? We have nothing left. She looked away from him, unable to see the hurt in his eyes. Only Wine knew how much she had missed him all this while. Hear me out for once. The day I was attacked, I was coming back to apologize to you and confess my feelings. I'm really ashamed of my words and actions. Please forgive me and give me a chance to prove myself. He said in a low tone. Wine chuckled bitterly. Would you change the hurt and pain you caused to me? You used me and threw me like a waste. Just to satisfy your ego and show me my place. Don't waste my time. I need a divorce. Now go away. She walked past him, but Theon held her arm. That was a lie. I had no intention to marry Aurelia. I spread those rumors about my visit to her just to show you that I won. I'm sorry. He mumbled with a lower head. Don't touch me. I don't want to see you. Can't you get it? She furiously raised her voice and stared at her for a while and kneeled in front of her. Don't give me such punishment, please. Don't leave me. I can't live without you. I just felt like you were looking down on me from the night because I loved you, but you didn't. I'm sorry. She stared at him with disbelief as his knights and guards were standing in the door. What are you doing? Get up. He shook his head. Not until you are ready to give me a chance. Wine bit her lips and crouched down to him. Why are you making fun of yourself? Get up, they're seeing you. Doesn't matter, let them see, I don't care. She let out a sigh and stood straight. Move away from here. They all vanished in seconds. She then turned to him. I'll give you a chance, now stand up. Thank you so much. He stood and kissed her forehead. It doesn't matter if you don't love me, my love is enough for both of us. He pulled her into his embrace. Who said I don't love you? You assume things. She rolled her eyes, resting her head on his chest. You never confessed. You could have told me earlier, nothing would have happened. I thought I exposed my true self and feelings in front of you, and you are making fun of me. I let out a sigh. I love you. I love you too, my lady. I promise I'll make it up to you and cherish you forever. He kissed her hair softly.